Well, this is founder made, obviously. So I would love all of the founders to introduce themselves. They will do a much better job than I ever could. And then I want to ask you all if you're a founder that was born or made, or both. Brendan. No, you know what? Ladies first. Lisa.
Okay. Hi, I am Lisa Price, and I am the founder of Carol's Daughter. Thank you. And I would have to say that I'm a founder who was made.
Yeah.
I don't think I was born a founder, but definitely made myself into one.
Yeah, you did. Can you tell us a little bit more about your founder story for those who don't know?
Well, when I started my company, first of all, I didn't realize that I was starting a company. I was making body products in my kitchen, and I gave them away to friends and family, and then my mother says, oh, you should sell them. And then I started to sell them, and it just kept growing. So I've usually referred to myself as the accidental entrepreneur. I didn't know that that's what I was meant to do, and that's what I was going to become. And I'm grateful that I did, because it's been an amazing growth story, not just the growth of a company, but the growth of a person. And, you know, letting go of fears and being more courageous and stepping outside the box and doing things I never would have done before. And I don't think that would have happened without me becoming a founder.
That's right. What a happy accident. Indeed. Sarah, can you tell us your founder story and if you were made or born?
So I'm Sarah Gibson-Tuttle. I'm the founder and CEO of Olive & June. I think it was more born than made, because both of my parents are entrepreneurs, and there was just such an entrepreneurial spirit in my family and growing up, and just pushing us to do new and creative endeavors. So I think born.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Olive & June for those who don't know?
So Olive & June is the first ever consumer-focused DIY nail brand, and the idea really was, how do you make beautiful nails accessible for everyone, everywhere? And so what started in our salons in Los Angeles really kind of blossomed when we launched our mani system, which makes it possible for you to get a salon-perfect mani at home, and that has launched into press-ons and a pedicure system, and just really being a holistic, complete solution for the consumer in nails.
You saved us all during the pandemic, sister. Thank you.
I mean, I feel like I saved myself during the pandemic. There was like a great thing to focus on.
And you took us all with you. Brendan, you're a many-time founder.
Yeah, I guess I am now.
And you're a many-time founder-made founder.
That's true.
You're an OG
that I am,
founder.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
you born or made, or both?
I'm gonna have to say made. I had no intention of ever starting a business. I used to do triathlon. I did it full time, and it was really, you know, you've heard this story many times, just trying to solve a problem I had. I had no ambitions of making it commercial or selling it. I knew nothing about that. I just, you know, swam, biked, and ran a bunch.
You said about that, you Canadian. You wanted to be a hockey player, right?
I did. That's actually true.
Well, I'm glad you did something else, and so are so many people who are fans of your companies. Can you tell us about your founder story for those who don't know?
Yeah, I started off, I did triathlon. I started track in high school, then I did triathlon, really enjoyed it, but I wanted to just fuel myself better, finding a way that I could just feel better, recover more quickly, because training is one of those things, not to go down a rabbit hole about training, but it's very simple. You just break down muscle tissue, you rest, you eat well, your body overcompensates, you become stronger than you were, and that's why training works. So I thought, okay, I should eat really good food then and learn about that, so I did. And that's how Vegas started, was me just blending up a bunch of things: protein, essential fats, fiber, greens, enzymes, all this stuff. Started drinking this shake, had it for quite a few years. It didn't taste good at all, but it was very functional. And then met someone who was entrepreneurial minded, and we decided to partner and bring it out as a product in 2004. And that was the first time I did any founding.
You're like, it's so simple. It's like, just run a marathon and just eat all the vegetables. No big deal. Simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
But you wanted to make it accessible to everybody.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Veganism and that you
Yeah,
said it before
exactly,
it was
like-
like a thing before there was almond milk at Starbucks.
Right. Yeah. You know, and as I learned more about eating plant-based, I learned about the environmental and ethical and just all the things around plant-based, and got really intrigued about that, and food security and the politics of food and all these things that I won't bore anyone with, but they just became very interesting to me. And so I did want to make it accessible. I wanted to make good, high-quality food accessible. That as it grew, and Vega was very expensive in the beginning, and the prices continued to come down, which was the plan. And now it's, eating plant-based is very easy. And, it always was for me, because I always ate simply. But if you want to eat food that people are going to accept as mainstream, it's, it took a while to evolve.
What was the first name for Vega? Because that evolved too.
Yeah, we had a list of potential names and logos. And you know what? It was the 11th hour. We had to pick something, and it's just like, well, it's not overt. Like, it's not. I don't think people will think vegan, but if you're thinking that way, you're like, well, is it vegan? Maybe it is. Like, maybe I should learn more. So we didn't want to be too and not to criticize any of these brands, but like Perfect Meal, Amazing Meal, Supreme Meal. They're all these like sort of descriptors of what they thought they were making, and we're just like, let's just pick a word, and it's just sort of. Looks better on a T-shirt.
And I love, that's right, thank you. But it was also longer, and then you shortened it. It was like a whole scientific thing.
Yeah, so it was Vega Complete Whole Food Health Optimizer was the name of the first product. Then it got changed to Vega 1.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. Simplicity.
Lisa, I love how you also came up with the name for your company. For those who don't know the story, can you share your list that you made?
Sure. So I made a list of things that I was and a list of things that I wanted to become. So I figured I would either continue to affirm something about myself that I loved or call into being something that I wanted for myself. And the list of things that I was Carol's daughter. I was also Robert's daughter. I was Gordon's girlfriend, but I didn't want to stay Gordon's girlfriend. I wanted that to progress, and it did, 32 years later. And so when I said Carol's daughter, something about it just, like I got like the goosebumps feeling, that little like chill that you get and you just know. But what was interesting about that is that was the first time as an entrepreneur that I felt that feeling, that gut feeling, that we learn how to recognize the more that we do this, and we learn that that's the thing that we have to trust. We look at the data, we look at the budget, we look at the plans, and then we still got to go back to, but what does the gut say? So I love the story of the name because it reminds me of that quality that you have to lean on in yourself as an entrepreneur. You have to trust your gut.
And you were somebody's assistant, and you didn't want to be
Yes,
anymore,
I was
right?
Hank's secretary, and I couldn't wait to stop doing that. Yes, so that was definitely not going to be the name.
Later. And you also have some familial ties with your name. Can you tell us that naming story, Sarah?
Yeah, so Olive and June is my grandmother and my great-grandmother's names, and I went through basically every combination of names in my family to figure out like how I could make this brand feel special, because I think I looked at it and thought I can name it something nail related, but the reality is I wanted, when people came in the salon, which was our first, it was our first foray into the business, I wanted people to feel like they were at their like family house, like they were with their family, they felt comfortable. So and I like love my grandmother June so much that it was always June, and it was basically like every combination of that possible. And I think everyone in my family got a little upset that they weren't the ones chosen, but Olive and June I felt that same feeling of like, this feels right. And every time someone said, well, it doesn't make sense because like doesn't say like nail shop. And I was like, no, I'm okay with that. Like, I like this. And it felt the most in my skin. Like, this feels right.
Nothing about Carol's daughter sounded like a beauty company. So, if I had a focus group back then and, charts and all that kind of stuff, who knows what it would have been called. But that was the name it was supposed to be.
Was Robert upset?
No, he was not upset. No. But he let everybody know, oh, Carol's daughter? She's my daughter.
I also feel like if you feel that way, I'll do anything you tell me to do. So if I did it right because of Lisa, like I'm in good company.
And Lisa has done it right. So
I mean, no one's done it better.
Lisa has done it really right. And you sold your company to L'Oreal 2015? 14, excuse me. And some folks were upset about it. Why do you think that was?
Well, it's a long thing to explain, but I'll try to shorten it for here. As African American people, we have not had the privilege of building things that we get to keep and that we get to keep in our communities. And when we did build things, unfortunately, they were taken away from us. So there's this feeling of not trusting, having had things stolen, and solidarity. So as an African American person, you are not likely to grow up in a family that has an entrepreneurial history, where you see your uncle did this, your aunt did that, grandma did so-and-so. And so when we build something that's ours, and if it gets to a place of success, we feel ownership over that, and we want to keep it, and we don't want anyone else to have it. So when I sold to L'Oreal, while that was a very successful business venture, and it was a great thing that I did, and I was helping to build family wealth for my own family, and I brought a staff of over 40 people with me from the company into L'Oreal and all of these wonderful things, a lot of people just saw this was ours and now someone else has it, and that's not fair. So I could have stayed in the place of negative and angry, because I was angry. I was like, do you know how hard I worked to build a company from a kitchen table to the largest beauty company in the world? Like, are you kidding me? I started at a flea market in Brooklyn, and I just sold for over $100 million. Like, come on. So there was that feeling, but I realized that what I needed to do was to help educate and to do things like this so that entrepreneurs understand this is how we become successful, this is how we build wealth. And in the Black community, it may be uncomfortable for a little while because we're going to be selling things to people that you might not like, but that's the only way that we're going to build wealth, so that 20 years from now, we're funding, so that 30 years from now, we're the bank that you come to. It just takes time to get there.
And there was this big moment that happened when you were scrolling on Instagram and you saw the company in a museum.
Oh,
Can
yes.
you tell us about that? Did that feel like a vindicating moment?
What she's referencing is, I was looking at Instagram one night, literally laying in bed, doing the thumb scroll, and I see this gorgeous shot of healthy hair butter, a jar of healthy hair butter, which is a product that we make. And it looks like it's on display somewhere, so the first thing I saw was the shot. The next thing I saw was the caption, and it said, that feeling when you realize that you were a part of history. And then I looked at who posted it, and it was a former Carol's Daughter employee, and then right under her name was the location, the Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian. So I was like, I'm in the museum? Oh my God, oh my God. And I can't breathe, and I can't see, and my hands are shaking. And I DM'd her, and I said, it's in the museum? And she said, yes. And I said, who else is there? What other brands are there? Because I was pictured next to a tin of Murray's. And she was like, you're it. And then she sent me the plaque. And it said that I was the pioneer of natural hair care. And, while I knew that, I didn't walk around saying it, and there were other hair care companies that started around the same time as mine, but there were a lot of doors that Carol's Daughter knocked down for that industry, but you just never have the opportunity to raise your hand and say, yes, I was that person. And so when the Smithsonian said that I was that chick, I owned it. But it was so amazing. And you don't think that you would end up in a museum and not know about it. Like, no one did fact checking with us. We had zero clue. And then I started notifying everybody in the company as soon as, she confirmed that it was real.
What a dream. And that just makes it better for all of us scrolling. Because better reason for that. You had an exit as well, Brendan. It was mixed emotions as well, because I think a lot of founders here have a goal of a big ol' exit with many, many figures and many, many zeros behind it. What was that like for you? Not all the elation that you expected?
Yeah, so it took us 11 years. My partner and I, we built for 11 years, and it felt like longer, and 11 years is long. But I was on the road a lot, and it came to it was the right time. And the promise from the acquirer was White Wave, and they own Silk. That's kind of their big brand, and I'm sure you've seen Silk, almond milk, soy milk, and they have some other brands too. But their promise was, like their whole slogan was, more plants to more people. So they were like, look, we're going to get the volume up, we're going to have the price come down, it's going to be for everyone, and it's like, this is great, this is what we want, this is perfect. We felt really good about it. And then they probably knew at the time, but they were acquiring companies to then sell themselves. So they were acquired by Danone, which is a big French yogurt maker. And it kind of struggled from there. It was tough to see just how they just didn't know what to do with it. And I can probably relate. Like, it's just sort of a little disheartening, because then the president of that company is like, make it taste like chocolate milk, make it cheaper. Those were his only words of advice. And none of these people drank it. None of them believed in it. And they didn't understand it. Like, so they cut the whole education arm. And the whole point, like Vega was, premium. It was about education. We had an education arm and we had a product arm. And they went together. Like, if you don't understand all about it and what you're actually buying, why would you pay so much more? Like, it needs education to go along with it. So if that's not there, you have to make it cheaper to sell it, then it becomes a discount brand. So that was sad to see that happen. And so, yeah, it was mixed for sure.
Yeah, we had Founder Made LA a few years ago, and the founder of Equinox said something similar, where it was almost a depression that she didn't expect, that she had raised this baby, and a goal. Sarah, you came up in Wall Street, right? In investment banks, and you hear a lot of companies say that is the goal, is to exit to this strategic or to have some other successful exit. When you were starting the company, did you have something specific like that in mind?
I probably had it more so than y'all did, just because like that is my background of working as a sales trader in finance. But I also have always been really, really focused on the experience and like making people happy. Like, that's what I did as a sales trader, and that's really what I do now. That's my job, is to make people feel good. And so I think there's always, you take on investment, and I think that there's an inevitable, there needs to be a transaction if you have investors, which we do. So I know that's like, there's a future there, but I also am so dedicated to not only the experience now and making people happy, but also we're the first ever brand in our nail category to actually focus on the consumer, understand that they basically, outside of a couple cities in this country, don't have access to an inexpensive manicure, and so they don't really have beautiful nails all the time because they can't afford it and the products kind of stink. And so we came in and said, we can change that. And so I'm so focused on that I think, of course, there's always like, I have a financial responsibility to my investors, but I also have a real responsibility to the consumers to continue to make amazing products for them so that they feel good all the time.
And you jumped into that mode as the pandemic happened. I want to get to pandemic pivoting, because that's what's on everybody's mind. And how did you do that out of the gate? When it happened, you had just opened what? The store in Beverly Hills?
Well, so we had 3 salons pre-pandemic. We also had launched our Mani system, which is our everything you need to get a salon perfect mani at home. Not to use the word perfect, I know that's a weird word, but I agree. But we had already launched it a year prior, and actually the revenues were double what we projected, so we knew we had something that people really didn't have a solution for. There is no, this is your set, this is everything you need, just in one box, add your polish and get your manicure. That didn't exist. So we created that prior, and then we executed in the pandemic. So less of a pivot and more of my team is incredible, and I could not be like more grateful to them. We executed with a very small team and grew the business 16 times that year.
Wow. Dang! Congratulations.
The team is incredible. We worked so hard to make sure that we only sold out, I think, twice. It was insane.
And then doing that pivot to at-home kits, did you run into supply chain issues at that point? It was like a game of whack-a-mole?
Everyone ran into supply chain issues. I think we picked our suppliers really specifically and carefully. We didn't pick the largest suppliers in the space that wouldn't really pay attention to us. We picked the suppliers that actually probably are like medium-sized, so they can handle growth, but they also are dedicated to what we're building, and also will create a really custom and actually effective formula, so it really will last on your nails and not chip. And so because we were specific there, we didn't have as many supply chain issues as other people, but we still sold out twice. But 16 times and selling out twice is pretty incredible, because we basically did 4 times our projections for the year, so we were not prepared for what that growth was going to look like.
And to what extent did you guys have pandemic issues and lessons that you have taken out of it?
Well, for Carol's daughter, I have to say 2020 was a very good business year for us. And I think that had to do with so many people having to take care of their hair at home and not being able to go to the salon. And the stores where we were being sold were essential, so they were open. Stores like Ulta were not open, but Target was open, Walmart was open, food and drug were open, so people had access to things. And then from the way that you operate as a business person, for me, it was the thing that I think sometimes we don't wish for a pandemic, so don't think that's where I'm going. But when we lived our lives pre-pandemic, if you were like me, where you traveled all the time, every week there was a flight somewhere, always on the go, there were times when I wanted the merry-go-round to stop and I wanted to get off, but it doesn't stop. So you don't get to get off, and you just try and manage and keep going. And when the pandemic happened, the merry-go-round stopped. They put the bar up in front of the horses. The music was out. Like, it was a wrap. So you had to learn how to have meetings virtually and have conversations in a different way. And the rest of your business associates, you know, the people that you would get on a plane for and sit down and talk to them for 45 minutes and then get on a plane and go back, are now in a space where they're like, well, we could just do this over the computer. It's fine. Like, you don't have to fly here. So I think we all learned how to work differently. And I know that I've definitely learned how to set up better boundaries, because when I began to work from home, it was really important. When you have school at home, I had a relative that I was caring for at home and work at home, and everybody's working out at home. There was a lot of juggling, and you had to have a really firm schedule, and you had to stop and go eat. Because when you were at work, you just ordered something and it came to your office, or you went to the cafeteria. You would think when your kitchen is down the hall that you'd stop and eat, but you don't. So for me, it was a really, really great lesson in doing less, working more efficiently, setting boundaries, and learning how beautiful the word no is.
So beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
It's little but mighty.
1 syllable, 2 letters, but it says a mouthful.
It sure does. Brendan, you have also been spending a lot of time investing in other founders. Do you think that there is a boundary or a line, or where you think some business just can't be done over Zoom? Like, what's a Zoom and what's an in-person nice to have, need to have?
Yeah, I think that's what we're all trying to figure out. For really important meetings, I really like being there in person. It's just different. But yeah, a lot of there's a big trade-off. You know, if you obviously can, 45-minute call and you're done, not like, day of travel and hotels and all that. So that's the big question for sure. But like I say, the really important ones that maybe you've already had a Zoom call and you're thinking maybe this could be a really good partnership or whatever it is, I think, get on a plane and just go and just see if you jive in person.
Sarah, have you found that actually getting on a plane when we can and when it's been safe has helped move business along more? Or have you been able to adapt to more of a remote workforce and fundraising?
It's funny because one of my friends is sitting in the audience and she was telling me about like a remote workforce way before the pandemic, and I was like, that doesn't work. Who would ever do that? I think post-pandemic, I think what I have come to grow into and appreciate is how incredible the talent can be when you grow a team that actually doesn't necessarily live in your city. And so now we have a team all over the country. I mean, I think only half of our team is in Los Angeles, and that's been incredible talent-wise for us because we've been able to work with incredible people that don't necessarily want to live in LA, although everyone should move to LA. I would like everyone to live in my city.
I agree.
Exactly. But so that, I think it's been, for me, business-wise, for the team, it's been incredible. I still like to be in person. I still like these opportunities. I mean, I still welcome getting on a plane. I think we haven't seen our suppliers. We just saw our suppliers for the first time because we do a lot in Asia, and it was really exciting to have them be in Los Angeles. And you really break bread that way in a real way. But I also like the flexibility. I like that you don't have to fly for every podcast that you tape. I like that you can do some meetings, and so much can be done now digitally. I like both. So I kind of like this post-pandemic world of team both, and make it work to fit your business, your life, your desire.
And as that was going on, you really grew the company's social media presence, and you went live, I think it was every day or something during the pandemic.
For 7 weeks.
Like a boss.
It was a lot.
That is a lot. Also during that time, a lot of brands started speaking out about issues in the news. I would be remiss to not bring up the Roe news of the day. At what point do you feel as a company you need to make a statement about what's going on in the world?
I'll go first. I think if it's about human rights, I think if it is about our collective humanity, I feel a responsibility as a brand to be very, very vocal that we truly believe that human rights are unequivocally something we should be talking about. I think if it's an attack on a minority group in the United States, we need to stand up for the fact that that's fucked up. Sorry for the language, but the reality is that we have a responsibility, a social responsibility to stand up for our community. Our community is inclusive of every single person who wants to be part of our community, and we're thrilled for that. So we're making a statement on Roe today, and I couldn't be prouder of our team and the fact that we put our whole heart on the line. The reality is, like, beautiful nails for everyone means everyone. And so then how do you make sure that you're standing up for everyone in your community and making them feel really seen and loved by the brand?
One of the things that I love about being the founder that I have been, being the storyteller in my brand, the voice in my brand, I have my own presence. So the brand, while it doesn't make statements in the same way that I will make statements, because we try to be very careful. We don't want to ever look as if we're trying to get you to buy our stuff by telling you what we're for or against. So the brand gets to be the brand, and the brand gets to sell, but Lisa gets to speak and speak as a mom, and speak as the mom of 3 amazing children, one of whom is a trans non-binary piece of wonderfulness, and another one who's young and maybe bi, maybe not, who knows, but they have the freedom to figure that out. I am vocal all day, every day, and I'm grateful that I get to be that voice right next to the brand that gets to do the job that it has to do.
And how do you figure that out? Like, when you think about what Lisa puts out versus what Carol's daughter puts out, or is L'Oreal kind of tricky to do that with?
It's a delicate dance. We get a lot of, I guess you would say, leeway, because within the corporate structure and with corporate PR, they know that we're going to be responsible. We have a great track record, so they trust us with the words that we're going to use. So there isn't a lot of oversight or that kind of thing. But Carol's daughter will not be specific to legislation, I guess. specific laws, you know, like a very like hard line, but it will be clear where we are,
About
if
ideas.
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. General thoughts. And as you're working with different portfolio companies, Brendan, how have those conversations gone down? Because this is a relatively new thing that brands have become, you know, voices on everything that's going on. And sometimes, you know, things that they might not want to comment on. Where have you seen that conversation shake out?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, for me, authenticity, being genuine, really, kind of like what you're saying, you don't want to look as though you're pandering and saying something that you just think your audience wants to hear. You know, you really, if it's true, say it. And so someone who I admire a lot, who was quite controversial when he was running his company, is Chip Wilson, who started Lululemon from Vancouver. We're both from Vancouver. So I sort of, you know, saw how that evolved, and he, you know, he said some things that were offensive to some people, but I found that somewhat refreshing in that you knew what you were getting. Like it was very real, it was very raw. He would speak off the cuff, and I like that. And the new CEO, and I'll just use this example, I don't know what he actually thinks, because you know it's a public company now, and so his voice is Lululemon's voice, and they're one of the same. Which is interesting because yeah, like I say, I don't know what he actually thinks, the CEO, because he just has this, you know, this playbook that he has to kind of read out, and I feel it loses a bit of soul that way. Like I'm okay with a controversial figure, and if that's what he thinks, I want to know, and then you can choose to, you know, agree or disagree, and if it's disagree, do you then stop buying those clothes? I don't know. That's a decision people can make, but I appreciate that in entrepreneurs who will just say what they feel, very transparent, and you know what you're getting.
And Sarah, how are you thinking about that too with the press that Sarah does and the press that Olive and June does? Is there a line?
Sometimes. I mean, I think Lisa makes a great point. She's obviously much more seasoned than I am and how to navigate that. But I would say that the reality is, to your point, is that the founder is the face. Not every brand has a founder and in that way, and not every brand has a founder that's the face of the business. Olive and June has me as the face of the business, and so really I make it very clear where I stand. Again, I do some things on my personal that don't happen on the Olive and June brand page. They are two separate pages for a reason. And I don't think Olive and June should comment on everything. So I end up commenting on more. But I think the reality for me is that I have a bit of like a low ego on Sarah Gibson Tuttle. I have a real focus on Olive and June. What I want is for everyone to be able to experience this product and this happiness and this joy that Olive and June brings. I don't really care personally about the press about me. If it helps Olive and June, great. And if it doesn't, then I'm totally fine to be the person like watching them mix the paint.
But to get a little insider baseball, even just walking up to the panel, some founders here are like, how do you even get on this panel? How do you host this panel? How have you worked with PR agencies or in-house, or what kind of advice can you give to founders who are looking for some of that press?
First, I feel like you're the icon. I feel like you tell everyone.
I was just trying to think of how to say it, because it was really interesting when you were saying that if it's good for the brand, great. I don't really care about it for me. And I remember being that person, like, who wants to write about me? Like, I don't care. I figured if somebody knew my name, then they really knew the brand name, because Carol's Daughter was built at a time when we didn't have social media. So if somebody recognized me in the street, I was like, wow, they're really a fan of the brand. This is great. But now that, I mean, I still work for the brand, but now that the brand is a part of L'Oreal, there really are these two people. You know, there's Carol's Daughter, and there's Lisa as the founder of Carol's Daughter, but then there's Lisa who's a woman, and Lisa who's a Black woman, and Lisa who's a mom, and Lisa who's an entrepreneur, and Lisa who's a mentor and serves on boards and all of these other things. So now there's more importance for Lisa Press and Carol's Daughter Press, but I'm always very careful to maintain the balance, that one doesn't hurt the other or overshadow the other. We're always each other's halo and always each other's complement.
And what would you say to other founders that are like, I don't want to be on, I don't want to be in front of the camera, or I don't want to tell my story, I just want the product to do its thing?
Well, I actually had drinks with someone last night who was having this battle with themselves, like internal battle of like they don't really want to be the face of the business, but they've been told that they need to be. There's plenty of brands. Think of Mansur Gavriel for one example, where no one knew who the founders of Mansur Gavriel were. There were two women, and they created an incredible line, and it had an iconic moment. I don't think you have to be on Instagram or be the face if you don't want to. I think it should be authentic to who you are. And I'm a person who loves to do my own nails. I love to chat with people. It's really exciting to me to be with the community. But if it wasn't authentic to me, then I wouldn't be front and center. We would make it just about the product.
Well, that's something that we were talking about too yesterday with like going on TikTok, right? A lot of brands want to figure out TikTok. I could have barely figured out Snapchat if we're being really honest. But if you aren't natural with those types of platforms, do you think you should just sit some of them out?
But on TikTok, nails are huge. So I don't have to be the face of Olive and June's TikTok because nails are actually hero. So I think it's also like there's other ways to make content than someone's face, at least in nails or in another category.
Do you feel like it's better to go deep in one platform or to really have some sort of presence on all the social platforms?
I think it depends on your brand, and it also depends on your consumer and what they look to you for. There are some platforms that people treat like customer service. There are some platforms that people treat like this is where I get inspired, and then there are some that they go to for fun. So I think you have to know your audience and know your medium to know which one to put the importance on.
Brendan, you started a magazine. So can you give us some tips, insider tricks for getting press or pitching, or what are the good pitches or bad pitches you've had?
Well, I think first and foremost, and this is, of course, easier said than done, but is make something that's so revolutionary that it is news. It is written about.
Just that.
Just that.
Just do something.
Be iconic.
And Vega never got that. I mean,
legend.
Vega was, it was another powder. Like it wasn't. Some press came later, but like Beyond Meat, for example, I'm good friends with Ethan there and worked with him closely, and when they were starting out, they were getting a lot of press because they were doing something that was really interesting. It's like making meat out of plants. It's interesting, it's sticky. And so they've had amazing coverage in Time and Wall Street Journal, New York Times, everything, because they did something really unique. So just do that. But if that's too difficult,
cool. Good
then there are ways of, well, as Nicole said, I'd started a magazine. It was just this attempt, it was quite a few years ago, to have some sort of like conventional media that you could completely control, aside from obviously social media. And it was really interesting. Like I enjoyed it. So I would interview interesting people and just profile them and people who I thought were doing cool things. And, it did okay. It was in Whole Foods. Well, it actually still is in Whole Foods. It's a free magazine. It's called Alive. And it's kind of transitioned over the years. I'm now just like, editorial consultant, I think, but we sold that to my friend and I. But it was a good experience in general. But I like the intention of it. And I would like to have done it better. But it was sort of one of those things where spread a little thin, and more help on it would have probably been helpful. But it's like, of course, the intention was like, let's, instead of just trying to get the press's attention, just become the press. And it was sort of had mixed results, but it kind of worked out.
Okay, just become iconic, start a magazine, get press.
Yeah.
Perfect equation. I love that. You said, in hindsight, Brendan, that you would have wanted to do it better. Lisa, I had heard you talking on an interview about speaking to your former self, and I know this is a question that gets thrown around a lot. And it really struck me that you would say, like, you did all the things to get me to where I am, so not necessarily do anything differently. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I do, because I don't know how else I would have learned the lessons that I learned. So, You know, whenever someone asks me that question, like, what would you tell your former self? I think of it like an episode of Star Trek or something where they go back in time, but you can't mess with the time-space continuum, so you can't change history. So I would go back and just maybe say, trust your gut, you know, because you don't want to give away details because you learn from the lessons. I think when you're going through it, there's this pressure to be perfect, which doesn't make any sense because why should we be perfect at something we've never done before? There's a pressure to always be successful. You can't make a mistake. You think that if you make a mistake, your business is going to fall apart. Your employees are not going to be able to get their paychecks and everything's going to be a disaster. But that's not actually what happens when you make a mistake, but you think that that's what's going to happen. And you don't learn differently until you make the mistake, you fail, you fall down, and you get back up. And you realize, I didn't lose the business, everybody's still getting paid, we're still successful, we just hit a bump in the road, and we've got lots of cocoa butter in our warehouse, we'll be fine. The scars will heal. So there's no other way to learn that other than to fall down. You don't know that you can get back up until you fall down.
As long as you have cocoa butter.
As long as you have cocoa butter. Cocoa butter, shea butter, we're good.
And Sarah, would you do something differently in hindsight?
I mean, I would do so many things differently. I'm not perfect like Lisa. No, I think I would listen more. I think that one thing that I really wish I had done, I'm so wanting to solve everyone's problems immediately. I so want everyone to feel good. I'm a Libra, I like balance. I don't want you to be upset. I will rush to apologize, whatever it takes. And I think the reality is that, to Lisa's point, when you listen, when you hear what you've done or what has been done, doesn't have to be like a me issue, but it could be like a brand issue or a company issue, then you can actually really solve what the actual problem is, and you can also learn a ton and not make that same mistake or misstep again. So I would listen more and talk less.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen more than we talk. This is a debate that Jason and I have had many times when we get asked for the questions that we're going to ask on panels. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what they said yet. I have to hear what they said first. But I would love to hear from you guys. I know these are amazing founders that we have access to. Any questions from the audience? Yeah. For Brendan, yeah. I'll try to repeat the question. So for Brendan, when there was the exit of Vega, you were upset. Did you get over it because you got a lot of money, essentially? Okay.
Well, that's a good question. No, and money aside, I think it was the right move because you can only build so far. So building beyond that would have been distribution. And trying to get it out to more people is not something that I think myself or my partner or team would have been really good at. So when companies acquire you, they acquire a brand, they have distribution. Like any company that buys you has distribution. They're not buying that. They're buying you, the story, the product, the brand. So I think we'd reached the end of the road, to be honest. Like I think that we did it as well as we could have to that point, and now it's time to build something new. There's no limit to things that you can dream up and build, right? So it wasn't as though that's it, you can't ever be a founder of anything again. If that were the case, then no, I would say that was the wrong decision. But I think it was the right decision because then, yeah, you built something new, and the building phase is the fun part, at least for me, and probably speaking for a bunch of entrepreneurs, because that's when things they move quickly, they're exciting, they're fast, they're not like all these decisions by like people who own the company that just take forever, and meetings about meetings about meetings, and it never goes anywhere. And innovation means going and looking what other companies are doing and trying to copy them. Like that's what our innovation team did. Like it made no sense. So it's sort of at the point where it just like, that's just got to end. Like, let's just leave that. Okay, fine. Let's just do something new. So I hope that answers your question.
So you weren't involved after. There was not an acqui-hire. Acqui-hire? I can never say it right. You were involved, though, with your company.
I still am, yeah.
And we were talking about a girlfriend who was
Who
just
would ever let Lisa go?
Yeah.
People were like
Wouldn't.
super
It would
glued
be
to her.
Illegal, should be illegal. Okay. One last question. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for Lisa. You brought up how when Carol's daughter got taken over by L'Oreal, the backlash that you faced, especially from our community. Can you explain a little bit how you navigated that? Because it's definitely something that's still taking place now as a lot of successful brands are being acquired. Is acquired the word? Acquired, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting space. So how I navigated it then, and then how I still navigate it now, because it's still something that has to be navigated today. I learned that the name of my company was being used to describe a certain technique. There was another company that had some backlash a few weeks ago about a change in formulation, and there was a rumor that that company had been acquired, but it hadn't. And apparently on Black Twitter, someone used the term, oh, they pulled a Carol's daughter, you know, like, oh, I'm a verb, okay, or whatever. But it was, well, the first thing I had to do was put down my phone, literally, because the day that the acquisition occurred, it was a very busy day. And I literally did not look at my phone until 7 o'clock in the evening. Announcements began at 10 a.m. and I was in meeting after meeting after meeting and press and blah, blah, blah. And like 7:30, I'm sitting in my kitchen looking at my phone. And there was one particular comment from someone who asked me, what kind of lesson and legacy are you leaving for your children if you teach them that as long as there's enough zeros on the check, they can be a sellout? And I was like, who are you? I don't know you. I was literally taking my earrings off in the kitchen. You know what I'm talking about. And I started answering back, like not as the founder of this company, but like as a mom, like you did not just come for me. And as I'm typing, my phone starts going, and my social media person is like, put your phone down. Put your phone down. We've got you. Put your phone down. And I had to put my phone down and remember that that's not my job. That's someone else's job. And so it was a matter of meeting with PR, working with PR on how do we educate? How do we explain what this process is? And then I also had to recognize that people's feelings were valid. They just didn't live in my world. They weren't literally in my kitchen with me. They didn't know me. They had written a story for me, and I messed it up. I changed it. But they forgot that it's my life and it's not theirs. So it's constant education and constant speaking, and it takes a ton of humility. For an example, there's a store, and I don't want to say the name of the store because they haven't done anything wrong at all, but just to make the point, there's a store where I began my career outside of my home, and I was Black owned at the time. Now I'm not Black owned, I'm Black founded, and I can't have a space in that store today while they're making space for Black-owned brands because I don't qualify anymore. But I opened up the door for all of the brands that can be in there today. But you don't get that recognition, and you have to be okay with that. You can't worry about that. You have to be okay with, well, I opened the door and I did my job 15 years ago. I have a different job today, and I can't focus on what happened 15 years ago.
Can you just drop the mic?